Hello, good evening, Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome from ACCA to this webinar on ACCA practicing certificates and the Register of Practitioners. A very important subject, and I think there used to be a lot of questions from members within Pakistan and from across the region to know more about the practicing certificate and the new Register of Practitioners. So today we have with us Martin Monahan, and Martin is the Authorization Policy Manager based at our head office in the UK. And welcome to the webinar, Martin.
Hi, Haroon. Hi. Thanks for inviting me.
Right. So about the webinar, let me do some housekeeping and a bit of introduction. Most of you, I am sure, would have used the portal before. It's not very difficult, not complicated. You will be able to see a questions dialog box in the menu. So whenever you have any questions, you can type it in. I'm going to moderate the conversation. I'm going to filter out questions. And during the question answer break, I will pass on those questions to Martin, who will answer them one by one. If it is a repeat question, just in the interest of time, we will request you to watch the recording, because if you continue answering the questions again and again, it's going to take a lot of time. So, and like I said, this session is being recorded. So the recording of the session will be available to you afterwards for references, for for being updated once again. And for those who are not attending the session live today, they will be able to view the recording of the session offline afterwards. That was just some housekeeping. The session is continuing for about 2 hours, or maybe a little less than 2 hours. But for the first half, Martin is going to run through a presentation. And I'll appreciate if you have any questions. You can start noting them down, putting them in the questions dialog box. But the later half of the webinar is going to be exclusively for Q&A. So any question that comes to your mind, any specific situation that you are facing, we'll be able to answer those. Please remember that this session is about the ACCA practicing certificate and the Register of Practitioners, ACCA's own policy. So this session, let me tell you, is not about the practicing rights in certain countries, what is the future of statutory audit rights in Pakistan or in any other part of the world. So this session is particularly about the policy and how can members get a practicing certificate, what are the conditions in which they require a practicing certificate, or is it just the Register of Practitioners that is sufficient for them? So I think this is a recent change that was brought into the ACCA rulebook, and therefore we thought it was essential for a lot of people to understand what is the difference and which one applies in which situation. So without any further ado, I will pass on the baton to Martin, who will take us through the presentation. So Martin, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Haroon. Hello, everybody. I'm Martin, as Haroon said. I'm the Authorisation Policy Manager. I'm based in Glasgow, and I'm here today to talk about ACCA's practicing certificate requirements and the new Register of Practitioners. Okay, these are the topics that I'm going to cover today. First of all, I'll give a bit of background about the changes that Haroon mentioned, the changes to our rulebook. Then I'll talk about ACCA's Register of Practitioners, then ACCA practicing certificates. Then I'll provide some information about the application forms and who to contact if you have any queries. And then there'll be an opportunity to ask any questions. Okay, so just a bit of background first. As you probably know, up to the 31st of December 2016, it was mandatory for any member engaged in public practice as a principal of an accountancy firm to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA, even if a practicing certificate was held from another body. That was the rule that was in place up to 31st of December 2016. So public practice, it extends beyond audit work to include signing or producing any accounts, any reports, any certificates, or any tax returns that a third party might rely upon. So doing someone's tax return, preparing accounts, that falls within the definition of public practice. So any member who's doing that type of work as a principal of a firm must hold a practicing certificate from ACCA. The definition of public practice also extended to holding yourself out as available to undertake practice work, which means holding yourself out as a partner of a firm or a director of an accountancy practice. If you make yourself available to undertake public practice work, then that was a situation where you had to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA, even if you held one from another body. Employees of firms are generally not required to hold a practicing certificate unless they are responsible for signing off accounts on behalf of the firm. So in the UK, for example, we have it's called responsible individuals, and a lot of them are employees in the firm. They're not principals, but they have signing rights. They have to hold a practicing certificate. So a member who, for example, is handed responsibility for signing off audit reports, but they're only an employee, as audit work is public practice, they would have to have held a practicing certificate from ACCA. So up to the 31st of December 2016, there were two ways to apply for a practicing certificate. You could either submit a practicing certificate training record, or you could send ACCA a copy of your local practicing certificate if you held one from a recognised local accountancy body. But on the 1st of January 2017, those rules changed. We have introduced a new register of practitioners with effect from the 1st of January 2017. So under these new requirements, a member who is engaged in public practice as a principal of a firm is still required to notify ACCA that they are in public practice. They are a principal in a firm or a sole practitioner, but they're only required to hold a practicing certificate if there is a local regulatory requirement for them to do so. So the rule that was in force up to 31st of December 2016, which stated that any member engaged in public practice as a principal of a firm had to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA, even if they held one from another body, that rule has been changed. If there is no local regulatory requirement for you to hold an ACCA practicing certificate, then you no longer have to hold one. Instead, you must apply to be placed on ACCA's register of practitioners. So just to give an example, ACCA is recognised in Australia to authorise members as tax agents. So that means that any member in Australia who wishes to be a tax agent must hold a practicing certificate from ACCA, because ACCA has agreed with the local regulator in Australia that we will make our members in that country hold a practicing certificate if they wish to be a tax agent. In countries where ACCA is not recognised under local law, like Pakistan, there is no longer a requirement for our members who are in public practice to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA. So in countries like, say, Australia, South Africa, the UK, Ireland, ACCA has statutory recognition, and it is compulsory for members in public practice in those territories to hold an ACCA practicing certificate, but in a country where ACCA does not have that recognition, there is no requirement to hold an ACCA practicing certificate, but we still wish to know which of our members are engaged in public practice. So rather than making every member hold a practicing certificate, we decided to introduce this register of practitioners for members who are engaged in public practice, but in a country where there is no requirement to hold an ACCA practicing certificate. So to apply to be placed on the register of practitioners, there is a simple online registration form available. It's on our website. In the practicing information section of the ACCA website, that is our area of the website. That is the area of the website that is aimed at members who are thinking about setting up a practice or who are already in practice. Within that section, there is a section called Forms for Practitioners or Practitioner Forms. If you click on that section, there is a link to the online registration form to be placed on the Register of Practitioners. On that form, you need to provide the names of the countries in which you are practicing and the name of your recognised national regulator in that country. And you have to confirm that you hold a practicing certificate or you are authorised in some other way to practice in that country. And you have to confirm this to ACCA on an annual basis that you continue to be engaged in public practice and you continue to meet the local law to practice in that country. There are no requirements around professional indemnity insurance, and there are no requirements around continuity of practice, and there is no fee to pay to be on the Register of Practitioners. The reason that we introduced the Register of Practitioners is to make a more simplified and proportionate practicing certificate regime. This regime still allows ACCA to know which of its members are engaged in public practice and that they are meeting the local regulatory requirements, but it does not require them to hold an ACCA practicing certificate. I think the previous requirement of making every member hold a practicing certificate, even if they had one from a local body, that requirement proved quite confusing. It caused a lot of issues. So we decided to change the rules, and we only want members to hold a practicing certificate in a country where ACCA is recognised to licensed members and there's a local requirement to hold one. So I understand that in Pakistan, ACCA does not have any statutory recognition. So a member in Pakistan who is practicing as a sole practitioner or a partner or a director of an accountancy firm, they are permitted to practice without holding a practicing certificate from ACCA, provided that they apply to be placed on the Register of Practitioners through that online registration form. But for members who positively wish to hold an ACCA practicing certificate, even if they're not required to, there are certain eligibility requirements that must be met, and they are basically the same as a member in the UK or Ireland who has to obtain a practicing certificate. So I'll run through the requirements for obtaining an ACCA practicing certificate. So ACCA awards two types of practicing certificate. There is a practicing certificate and there is a practicing certificate and audit qualification. Now, ACCA is not a regulator for audit in every country. ACCA can only award a practicing certificate and audit qualification in countries where ACCA is specifically recognised for audit purposes. For example, the UK, Ireland, Zimbabwe and Cyprus. In those countries, ACCA is recognised under statute to licence, to authorise our members to carry out audit work. So that means that ACCA cannot issue a practicing certificate and audit qualification in Pakistan. However, we can issue a non-audit practicing certificate. because that is available to any member in any country who meets the eligibility requirements. And this confers the right to undertake general practicing work only. It does not confer the right to undertake audit work. So if a member in a country that is not required to hold an ACCA practicing certificate still wishes to obtain one, these are the requirements that you have to meet. 3 years of supervised training in an ACCA approved employer, 2 of which must be post-membership. The post-membership experience must be documented in a PCTR, a practicing certificate training record. That is the document where you record your 2 years of practical training and you demonstrate to ACCA that you have met specific competences around taxation, practice management, business advice, accounting. There's a certain number of competencies that you have to meet. There's some that are mandatory, there's some that are optional, but you have to achieve a minimum number. Once you have completed that training and recorded it in the PCTR, you then send that into ACCA's authorisation team, which is where I am, along with a practicing certificate application form, and we will assess your eligibility to practice. So if you meet the experience requirements, if your training record is okay, and your practicing certificate application form is okay, we can then proceed to award you with an ACCA practicing certificate, and we would send you confirmation of that. However, on the practicing certificate application form, there are specific requirements that are mandatory for holding a practicing certificate, and these include professional indemnity insurance cover. That is cover that you have to obtain in case a client makes a claim against you for professional negligence, and it ensures that any clients receive any compensation that might be due to them. That is mandatory if you want to hold an ACCA practicing certificate, and there are no waivers available of that requirement. Continuity of practice, again, that is mandatory. If you're practicing or intend to practice as a sole practitioner, you must make a written agreement with another accountant who also holds a practicing certificate that they will look after the professional needs of your clients if you are incapacitated for any reason through, for example, ill health. So those are 2 mandatory requirements for holding a practicing certificate. All practicing certificates valid outside of the UK and Ireland are valid until the 30th of June every year. In the UK and Ireland, it's the 31st of December. Outside the UK and Ireland, it's the 30th of June. So about April time every year, we send out renewal invitations to existing practicing certificate holders, asking them or inviting them to renew their practicing certificate or to confirm that they no longer require a practicing certificate because, they've retired or they're no longer in public practice, they've moved into industry, or now, under the current rules, they could say, I wish to go onto the register of practitioners instead. Another requirement to be aware of is if you wish to hold or obtain an ACCA practicing certificate, a fee may be introduced in the future. Now, over the years, when there was a requirement for every member to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA, they have always been issued free of charge to members outside the UK and Ireland. And at the moment, that is still the case. However, if a member opts to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA, even if they're not required to, then a fee may be introduced to cover the costs of regulating and monitoring that member. The member would be expected to contribute to those costs. So, if you wish to obtain a practicing certificate, there are quite stringent requirements around experience, around insurance, around continuity of practice, and around fees. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, I'll now talk about the application forms and the contact information that's available at ACCA. There is a fact sheet, a very helpful fact sheet called Am I in Public Practice? This fact sheet outlines some of the common requirements, some of the common situations where a member would be in public practice. So I would recommend that everybody reads that fact sheet in order to work out for themselves if they are engaged in public practice. If after reading the fact sheet, you're still not sure if what you're doing is public practice or not, then you could send in an email to my team. I'll give you the email address later, and we will be able to confirm to you if you are engaged in public practice and therefore need to either hold a practicing certificate or go on to the Register of Practitioners. But that fact sheet is available on our website at that link. I can maybe send these links to Haroon after this presentation, and he could send them out to everybody. But that's a very helpful fact sheet. It doesn't just cover the UK and Ireland, it covers common situations where a practicing certificate is required, and it has some examples of particular types of work that would be classed as public practice, and it has some examples of work that maybe would not be classed as public practice. The registration form for the Register of Practitioners, again, that is online at the link on the screen. It is in the same place as all of our other initial application forms. If you click on that link, it opens up an online registration form, and you just go through that and you answer the questions that I outlined previously. You provide the countries, the names of the countries in which you're practicing, and the names of the local regulator in the country, or confirm that there is no local law that prevents you from practicing in the country. There is no local requirement to hold an ACCA practicing certificate. You just go through those questions, you sign a declaration, and you submit the form to ACCA for assessment. We will assess your submission to make sure that it meets the requirements, that you've answered all the questions, and we will then send a confirmation email to confirm that you are now on the Register of Practitioners. What that means is that in the Find an Accountant section of the ACCA website, there is a section called Find a Member. And in that section, there will be a flag against your name to indicate that you are a registered practitioner. Members who hold a practicing certificate have a flag that says this member holds a practicing certificate from ACCA. For members who are on the Register of Practitioners, there is a flag that says this member is a registered practitioner, and there is some explanatory text explaining what that means. Basically, that the member has informed ACCA that they are engaged in public practice, but they have opted not to hold a practicing certificate from ACCA because they have met all the local requirements to practice. The PCTR, the Practicing Certificate Training Record, for members who wish to obtain a practicing certificate from ACCA, that is available on our website. There are two versions. There is a UK and an Irish version for members who want a practicing certificate or a practicing certificate with audit qualification in the UK, or there is a rest of the world version for members who intend to practice outside of the UK and Ireland. So if a member, say in Pakistan, positively wished to obtain a practicing certificate, it would be that version of the PCTR that they have to document their 2 years of post-membership training in an ACCA approved employer. The practicing certificate application form, again, that's available in the forms for practitioners section of the website. That is the application form for members who have decided that they still wish to obtain a practicing certificate from ACCA. They do not wish to go onto the Register of Practitioners. So that application form will ask for all the details that we require in order to set you up as a practicing member on our database. For example, the name of your firm, the address of your firm, the contact details, the names and qualifications of all the partners in the firm, if there are any, the professional indemnity insurance details, the continuity of practice details, the fee which you have to pay, and you then sign a declaration, and you would send that with the PCTR. and as long as your training is accepted and you meet all the conditions on the application form, we can then award you with an ACCA practicing certificate, which will be valid through to the 30th of June of the following year. So I think that was most of the background information about how to obtain a practicing certificate and how to apply to be placed on the register of practitioners. The applications to apply to be placed on the register are dealt with by my team, which is the authorisation team in Glasgow. And there is an email address, authorisation@accaglobal.com, that you can use to contact authorisation if you have any queries about obtaining a practicing certificate, renewing a practicing certificate, or applying to be placed on the register of practitioners. On the website, the authorisation information is contained within the practicing information area of the website. So I think it's under the members menu, and then under sectors, industries and roles, and then you click on practicing information, and that will take you to the various pages that you need to look at that have all those fact sheets that I talked about. Am I in public practice, the PCTR, the registration form for the Register of Practitioners. Okay. Lastly, what I would maybe like to do is talk about some maybe FAQs, common questions that that members ask us about the new requirements. For example, is it mandatory for an ACCA member providing internal audit, tax, accountancy services to register on the Register of Practitioners or to hold a practicing certificate? The answer to that question would be, for internal audit, the answer would be no. Internal audit does not fall within ACCA's definition of public practice. However, preparing accounts, preparing tax returns, providing tax advice, preparing accounts and cash flows for use by banks or other lenders, and providing business advisory services, these would all be regarded as public practice. So if you're doing any of that type of work, you're in public practice, and you need to either apply for an ACCA practicing certificate or apply to be placed on the Register of Practitioners. I think a good fact sheet to read again is the Am I in Public Practice fact sheet, because it outlines some of the common situations where a member is or is not in public practice. What about members who are employed in a chartered accountancy firm? Are they required to register themselves, or is it just members who are partners in firms? Well, employees in firms, as I said earlier, employees are not generally required to hold a practicing certificate or to be on the Register of Practitioners unless they have signing rights. For example, they are responsible for signing off audit reports, in which case, as audit is public practice, they would need to hold a practicing certificate or to be placed on the Register of Practitioners. So an employee, an ACCA member who is an employee, say in a chartered firm, they are not required to hold an ACCA practicing certificate or to be placed on the Register of Practitioners unless the work they do as an employee falls within the meaning of public practice. An ACCA member who is a partner of a chartered accountancy practice or a director of a chartered accountancy practice or a sole practitioner in their own firm, they are required to hold a practicing certificate or to be placed on the Register of Practitioners, because holding yourself out as a partner, as a principal in a firm is regarded as falling within the definition of public practice. So you're required to notify ACCA of that and apply to be placed on the Register of Practitioners. Is there any cost involved in registration? There is no cost to be placed on the Register of Practitioners, but as I said earlier, there may be a cost introduced in the future for members who decide to obtain a practice practicing certificate from ACCA. At the moment, there is no cost, but if a member decides to obtain a practicing certificate and there is no requirement for them to do so, then they may be expected to contribute to the costs of that. And obviously, there's other costs involved in obtaining a practicing certificate, like professional indemnity insurance cover. So what are the benefits that a member achieves by registering a firm with ACCA? Well, ACCA would only register your firm if you decided to apply for a practicing certificate from ACCA. If you decide to be placed on the register of practitioners, then we do not register your firm, because you have confirmed to us that you are meeting all the local requirements to be able to practice. So we do not need to know about any firms in which you're practicing. We just need to know that you have told us, you have informed us that you are practicing in Pakistan and that you meet the local law to do so. If, however, you decide to obtain an ACCA practicing certificate, then we will need to create a firm on our database for you, and that is all obtained from the practicing certificate application form that you fill in. And if the practicing certificate is awarded to you, you are able to use the ACCA logo on your stationery or on a website. You're also able to use the description Chartered Certified Accountants on your stationery or on a website, provided that at least half of the partners are ACCA members, and provided that those ACCA members hold at least 51% of the voting rights. So those are two of the benefits of holding an ACCA practicing certificate for those who wish to. But the main benefit of holding a practicing certificate, of course, is to be able to say that you're regulated and monitored by ACCA. But I think maybe when I'm finished my presentation, Haroon might have some more information about the benefits of obtaining a practicing certificate locally in Pakistan, you know, what opportunities are available locally in Pakistan for members in practice. But as I say, a practicing certificate is only required for members who are practicing in countries where there is no requirement to hold an ACCA practicing certificate. What is the penalty for non-compliance? Well, if a member is engaged in public practice, then they must inform ACCA immediately and either apply for a practicing certificate or apply to be placed on the register of practitioners. So a member who is practicing but hasn't informed the ACCA is in breach of our regulations, so they must take steps to regularise their position as soon as possible. And that means for members in Pakistan either applying to be placed on the register of practitioners or applying for an ACCA practicing certificate. If you are unsure whether the work that you're doing is public practice or not, then by all means you can contact the authorisation team with information about the types of work that you undertake, and we would get back to you to confirm if that work is public practice or not. But any member who is a partner in a firm, a director in an accountancy practice, a sole practitioner or a sole director of an accountancy practice, they must obtain a practicing certificate from ACCA or apply to be placed on the register of practitioners. What is the turnaround time from ACCA to receive a practicing certificate or to be placed on the register of practitioners? The turnaround time is roughly 30 working days, but we are working within that at the moment. So if a member decides to apply for a practicing certificate, they should receive the certificate within 30 working days, provided that the application form and the PCTR has been properly completed. If not, then there could be an exchange of correspondence and there could be additional information required. So it could take longer than 30 days. But for the Register of Practitioners applications, which are more straightforward, then you should receive confirmation that you're on the register well within 30 days. Can a member on the Register of Practitioners use ACCA stationery? Yes, they can. A member who is on the Register of Practitioners can still use the ACCA logo on their stationery and can still use the description Chartered Certified Accountants, provided that at least half of the partners are ACCA members, and those ACCA members control the firm, which means holding at least 51% of the voting rights. So you don't have to hold a practicing certificate in order to use the ACCA logo. You can use the ACCA logo once you're registered on the Register of Practitioners, provided you meet the requirements to do so. And the email address to obtain a copy of the logo is logo@accaglobal.com, but I can send that around to Haroon after this presentation, along with all the other links. So, Haroon, I think that's me. I'm now happy to kind of answer any questions that anyone has, with your help, of course.
Sure. Thank you very much, Martin. This was very useful. And we do have quite a few questions so far.
Okay.
However, we have about 150 individuals on the attending the session live. If there are any questions, this is time we can start typing in your questions. We'll go through these questions that we've received one by one. So, Martin, if I can ask you the first question. This question is from Rehan Mandani. He's asking if he's engaged in tax practice, and in parentheses he writes preparing of tax returns and providing tax advice. And I am also registered with the FBR, which is the Federal Board of Revenue, as an income tax practitioner. He says, I hope this complies with the local regulation compliance requirement. Now, all I need to do is to apply to be included in the Register of Practitioners.
That is exactly right. That's exactly what he has to do. Yes, tax work is public practice. So if the member is able to complete the registration form to be placed on the Register of Practitioners and ticks the declaration that they are covered by that tax body in Pakistan, then that will meet the requirements. That's all he has to do.
Yes, and I can confirm that FBR does not require people who are practicing tax to hold the ACCA practicing certificate. So just just the entry on Register of Practitioners should suffice.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, the next question is from Bilal Awan. He's asking for the presentation. So Martin, with your permission, I'm going to forward a PDF version of this presentation to all the participants of the webinar, and therefore they will get access to the links that you've mentioned and the email details, the contact details. Is that okay?
That's fine with me. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, so Bilal, we will be able to share this email in a PDF format to all of you, and it'll come with all the links with it. Next question is from Rehan again. And the question is there any list of registered practitioners available to be verified online? So, Martin, if you can answer that, please.
There's not really a list. If a member is successfully registered onto the Register of Practitioners, there will just be a flag against the member's record in the Find an Accountant section of the website. So we do not have a list of all members. If you type in a member's name, it will bring up every member with that name, and it's a case of scrolling through them, and you find one who has the flag that indicates they are a registered practitioner, or you type in a country and a name, and it will bring up everyone in that country with that name. And you could scroll through the names and see who is a registered practitioner, but we don't actually have a specific list, no.
Yes, but Martin, there's another section of the website. I mean, the same place where you can find an accountant. It allows you to search for a practicing firm also. But if you don't know the name of a practicing firm, if you just want to know how many firms in Lahore, for example, in Pakistan, so I think the website allows individuals to look for firms in a particular city
It does,
in a
yeah.
practice. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes,
And
it does.
maybe
That
you
is
can
right.
demonstrate, Martin, is it okay if we can demonstrate that to a few individuals, to the participants? Yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
we can very quickly do that. So this was the page that Martin was sharing with us. Um, all right, so on this page, let's go through it again. Wait a second. Okay, find an accountant. In the meanwhile, I would encourage all the participants to submit their questions if they have more questions to ask. So if you look at this, if I say find an ACCA accountancy firm, and then let's suppose I don't know the names of the firms, I just type Lahore, and Pakistan is automatically there, and I say all find the firms, it will come up with a list of firms that are available in Lahore. So Adroit Accountex, Amina Javed and Associates, Wes Heatherlock, Liaquat Noman, and Daud Shah and Company. And then there is KPMG Pakistan. And there's another page, and that says Umar Zahir. Whether that's the name of a firm, but Umar Zahir is a practicing certificate holder. So that's how you can, you can look at the names of firms in a particular location, in a particular place. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to questions once again. Martin, the next question is from Khaja Hassan Umar. And the question is, if I have relevant experience of more than 9 years, but not in an ACCA approved employer, can I get a practicing certificate on the basis of that experience?
Yes, possibly. Yep. If the firm in which the experience was achieved was not an ACCA approved employer, but is a properly regulated accountancy practice, then the experience should still be okay. I'm not sure if there is very many ACCA approved employers in Pakistan, but if the firm in which the experience was achieved was, say, a chartered accountancy firm, then and the experience was under the supervision of a member who holds a practicing certificate from their regulatory body, then that experience should be okay. I mean, I would just say that experience has to be achieved in a supervised capacity. So experience can only be achieved as an employee or a subcontractor to a firm. It cannot be obtained whilst already a partner in a firm, because it has to be supervised experience. So as long as that 9 years of experience was in a regulated accountancy practice under the supervision of an individual who holds a practicing certificate from their body, then that should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and Martin, if I can stress the importance of supervision in this, I can narrate a few examples where of an application from Pakistan, was sent up to the head office, and the individual claimed that his supervisor was a partner, sorry, was a member and a practicing certificate holder of the National Accounting Body. And the head office, the authorization team, wanted to dig up the record of that individual and had to write to ICAP about this. And then we found out that the individual has relocated to Afghanistan. So we tried to get an access to him in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that could not be done. And that's why the individual could not receive a practicing certificate. So that's how stringent it is. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's very true. If if the principal who signs off the PCTR is not an ACCA member, then we have to carry out a status check with their own professional body. Now, sometimes it can be hard to obtain information from other professional bodies or about other individuals, but this is something that we have to do in order to confirm that the principal who signed off the PCTR is themselves competent to practice and is themselves met the requirements to be an acceptable principal. So yes, that situation, I mean, we do try and be flexible. There is waivers available as well for members who are struggling, like maybe in that particular circumstance. If we tried everything possible to verify the principal, but we just couldn't do it, then it would be possible to ask the admissions and licensing committee to look at the application and to make a decision on it if the authorization team are unable to make a decision on it ourselves, because we can only grant applications that meet the strict criteria, whereas the committee has the power to grant waivers. So if a member is struggling with a particular requirement, that example that you gave me, Haroon, or say if a member is 1 year into their 2 years of post-membership training and their supervisor passes away or retires and there's no one left to supervise them, the admissions and licensing committee might view that as an exceptional circumstance, and they could then consider waiving the remaining 1 year and grant the member a practicing certificate. So the admissions and licensing committee has powers that we don't have. So you are right, Haroon, they are very strict requirements, but we do have a bit of flexibility.
Yeah, and therefore, the 30 days process, are behind any application that is received. That just describes the amount of work that the authorization team has to put in, for each and every application, and that's why it says 30 days.
Yes, that's very true. Yep, that's very true. The PCTR, as I say, that should contain 3 years of experience and split into 6-month periods. So it's quite a task for our team to assess those applications, because a 3 years worth of training is a lot of information to get through, and there's a lot of checking that we have to do, as well as the status checks with the other bodies. We have to check the member has met the minimum amount of competencies. There's all kinds of checks that we have to do on applications, and we have to check the commentary that's been provided. Is the information provided by the member about this competence and that competence, does it meet the requirements? So we do check these in a lot of detail, and as you say, that's why it can take up to 30 working days.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to the next question, and this is a question that has been asked by at least three people. And the question is that if approved employer accountancy firm obtained practicing certificate in Pakistan, then are they required to obtain another certificate if they need to open a branch in another country like UAE or Qatar?
Yeah, so practicing certificates are issued to individuals rather than firms. So if a member is practicing in Pakistan and they obtain a practicing certificate from ACCA, but they then decide to move to another country, like the UAE, then they have to comply with the local law on practicing in that country, and they would have to go on to ACCA's register of practitioners to confirm to us they are practicing in that country and that they have met the local requirements to practice in that country. So it's more based on individuals rather than firms in terms of practicing. But for a firm to become an approved employer, then it has to contain at least one principal who holds a practicing certificate in the relevant country. So if a firm is located in Pakistan, then the principal has to hold or be authorised to practice in Pakistan. If that firm opens up an office in another country, then that firm has to comply with the local law on practicing in that country. That might mean obtaining a practicing certificate. The member might have to obtain a practicing certificate from the local body in that country. And in order to set up a practice, then we could register that office as an approved employer, as long as the member confirms to us that they have met the local law in, say, UAE or some other country.
Okay, but Martin, if you could take the example of, let's say, UK and Pakistan. So if there's a member in Pakistan who has been listed on the register of practitioners, now wants to open a branch in the UK where there is a requirement by
Yeah,
law that members need to hold a practicing certificate. So this member or a representative of the firm in the UK will have to apply for a practicing
they
certificate
will.
and only then they can practice, yes?
They would have to hold a practicing certificate for the UK.
Okay, but if
So
it is, let's suppose, only a front office, or if it's a marketing office in London, but the work is being carried out here in Pakistan, what are the rules in that case?
yeah, see, this is a complicated area because the member could be seen as holding out. So even if they're not actually undertaking any work from the UK office, they could be seen to be holding out as as available to undertake UK accountancy work. It's maybe a query that I would need to maybe speak to someone from our technical advisory team about, Haroon. That's a very specific query. So I would maybe
Okay,
need to look into that one a bit closer. If you could maybe send it
sure.
on to me after the presentation, yeah?
All right, perfect. Let's move on to further questions. Bilal Awan is asking, if a person is a sole practitioner, what is the requirement for ACCA logo? All right, Martin, if you
Yep,
would understand the question, reply.
yep. Yeah, for a sole practitioner, they are entitled to use the ACCA logo. The requirement to use the ACCA logo is that half of the firm's partners must be must be ACCA members, and the ACCA members must hold 51% of the voting rights. So that a sole practitioner would meet that requirement.
Okay, and Martin, just for my clarity, are they allowed to use the standard ACCA logo, or is it a specific logo, just like we have in case of approved employers, that they use for
Yeah,
firms?
yeah. There is a specific ACCA logo that must be used, and those email requests come to our team. So they must use the exact format that we send to them.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
just to
Harun. Yeah, yeah. Just to
members, sorry.
yeah, sorry. I just want to clarify the requirements again. Sorry. So to use the ACCA logo, so there's two requirements here. There's the one to use the ACCA logo, and there's the one to use the description Chartered Certified Accountants. So to use the ACCA logo, the only requirement is that the firm contains at least one ACCA member as a partner. That's the only requirement for that. To use the term Chartered Certified Accountants, half of the partners in the firm must be ACCA members, and those ACCA members must hold 51% of the voting rights. So it's two separate requirements.
Okay, and so sorry, Martin, I was just trying to highlight that ACCA's own logo that you're seeing on the top left corner of the screen is
Yep,
ACCA's intellectual property. Any
it
member
is.
or a firm or an approved employer, I mean, nobody except for ACCA are allowed to use this logo. I mean, we've noticed in Pakistan that ACCA members use this logo on their business cards, on their stationery, on their website. This logo cannot be used unless a permission has been received from ACCA for its use. Isn't that correct, Martin?
That is exactly right. So if an individual who's not a member of ACCA is using our logo, then as you say, that's a breach of our trademark, and that is an issue that has to be alerted to the head office, because that is our intellectual property. So you're exactly right, Harun. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. The next question is from Muhammad Nasir Yunus. He's asking if a member used the word consultancy with his firm's name instead of chartered certified accountants, then why he is required to pay ACCA as he's not using the name ACCA in Pakistan?
Because he would be holding out as available to undertake public practice work. So do you mean a member who does not hold a practicing certificate or who's not on the register using the term accountancy in their firm's name? If so, that would be holding out, even if they do not refer to their ACCA membership, even if they do not use the ACCA logo, even if they do not use the term Chartered Certified Accountants. The fact is that the person is a member of ACCA and is bound by the ACCA rulebook, so they would be regarded as holding themselves out as available to undertake public practice work, so they need to comply with our regulations. So they would have to obtain a practicing certificate or go onto the register of practitioners before they could use any kind of term that gives the impression to the public that they are available to undertake accountancy work.
Right.
I think it's all about the perception of the public. Would a member of the public think that this member is available to undertake public practice work? By using the term accountancy, that would be the case. And because the person is a member of ACCA and they have signed up to all our rules and regulations, they must comply with them, even if they don't refer to their membership on their stationery, even if they do not tell clients that they are a member of ACCA. The fact is they are a member and they've undertaken to be bound by our rules. So, you cannot get around the rules, by just not referring to your ACCA membership.
All right. I think this was sufficient explanation. Next point, the next question is from Abdul Manan, and his question is, this is a question from Muhammad Kashif, and since this is a very important topic, very important subject, I will request Martin, even though he's already explained this, but I'll request him to explain it once again. Martin Kashif is asking, what is the difference between registered as a public practitioner and registered into the register of practitioners? So although you've explained this, but since this is a very important point, can you, for one last time, explain it again?
So is this the what's the difference between a practicing certificate and the register of practitioners?
Yes.
Was that? Okay. So a practicing certificate from ACCA is a license to practice, but only members in certain countries are required to hold a practicing certificate because ACCA has recognition in those countries. Those countries are like UK, Ireland, the Channel Islands, Isle of Man, Cyprus, Zimbabwe, Australia, South Africa. ACCA is recognised by law in those countries to authorise members to undertake certain types of work. In the UK, for example, ACCA is recognised under the UK Companies Act. It's recognised under the Irish Companies Act to award an audit qualification. It's recognised in Australia as a tax body. It's recognised in South Africa as a tax body. So in countries where ACCA has a recognition, our members who are working in those countries in public practice need to hold a practicing certificate from us in order that we can satisfy ourselves that they are competent to do so. When we reached an agreement with the bodies in these countries to be a recognised body, we told them that we would make our members in those countries hold a licence to practice in order to reassure them that we would only be the only ACCA members who met certain strict requirements would be offering those services in those countries. In most other countries, ACCA does not have any recognition under statute. Like Pakistan, ACCA is not recognised under local law to authorise members to do audit work or to do tax work. It used to be that under our regulations, we would still make those members hold a practicing certificate, but the rule has now changed. The rule is now that if you are practicing in Pakistan or any other country like that, where ACCA has no recognition, then we do not want you to hold a practicing certificate from us, but we do want you to tell us that you are engaged in public practice, and we want you to apply to be placed on a register of practitioners so that we know which of our members are practicing, so that we know that you are complying with any local law in that country. Does that help, Harun?
Yes, I think that's adequately clear. Let's move on to the next question. This one is from Abdul Manan, and he's asking that sometimes he is to sign ERP or system audit report of clients in Pakistan and Qatar. The report covers flaws or limitations of ERP systems, which is a typical ERP system audit. So he's asking, does he need to get a practicing certificate or register of practitioners or none?
And is that an audit, as in an audit that's required under statute? An audit of financial accounts, or is that an internal audit work?
My knowledge is that there is no requirement for ERP system audit as per statute at the moment. But Abdul Manan, if you have some other information, please let me know. But let's discuss both cases. If there is no requirement in statute, what happens then? But if there is, what's the case then?
Yeah, if a statutory audit is required under, like in the UK, it's the UK Companies Act 2006. If a statutory audit, if the client is required by law under the Companies Act in that country to have an audit done of its accounts, then a member has to hold a practicing certificate. If it's an internal audit of a company's procedures, then that is not classed as public practice, and no practicing certificate, no register of practitioners is required. Okay. So that's quite a specific query. Again, if the member isn't sure, then by all means, if they could send the query through, I can look into it for them. Yeah.
Okay, so Abdul Manan, since your query is very specific, if you can send us this query in an email, we will be able to get a more detailed answer for you. Moving on, we have a question from Farhan Zaka, and I think the question is not very clear, but I still put it up. It says, why audit work is not included in the definition of public practice as per ACCA?
Right, audit work is included in the definition of public practice. I think in most countries, or most regulators, or some regulators, public practice for them just means audit and audit only. But for ACCA, the definition of public practice extends beyond audit to include signing any report or any certificate or any tax return that a third party might rely on. So ACCA's definition of public practice has always extended well beyond audit to include those types of work. So it definitely includes audit, but it includes more than audit.
Martin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, yep.
All right, should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, is that answer quite okay? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think in maybe one of the slides that I had on earlier on, it did give an indication of what the definition of public practice was, and it maybe just wasn't clear that it includes audit. I think it said it extends beyond audit to include, tax work and signing any accounts or any certificates or any reports that a third party might rely on. So ACCA's definition of public practice is quite broad, and it covers most types of work associated with an accountancy practice.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull out that slide.
Yeah, I think it was that one there, Harun.
Yeah, this one.
Yep.
So the second bullet point describes it.
Yep. again, I think that fact sheet, am I in public practice, that is a very good fact sheet. That should clarify a lot of questions if a member isn't sure about whether the type of work they're doing, the type of service they're offering is regarded as public practice or not. That's a very good starting point.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next question. We have about 10 more questions lined up, so let's very quickly try to answer them. Baba Khatak is asking, he's saying, I work in an audit firm and report to the audit partner. He says, my job title is that of an audit director, but I do not have the sign-off authority. Do I need to be registered on ACCA's Register of Practitioner?
Right. Is audit director just a job title, or does director mean registered with the equivalent of Companies House? See, in the UK, in a limited company, the directors are registered with Companies House, a statutory director. Is there an equivalent in Pakistan? Or is director,
No.
is it just a job title? So it's a senior position in the firm? Yeah. If so,
Yes,
then
the firm.
yeah, okay. So it's an unincorporated practice. Yeah, it's just a firm. Yeah. It's not a
Yes.
limited company. Yeah, in that case, a practicing certificate wouldn't be required if director is just a job title. If it's just, a job title to indicate that you're a very senior employee, then no. But if you were in a limited company in the UK, say, and you were a director, you would be classed as a principal of the firm and you would need to hold a practicing certificate.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. The next question is from Bilal Awan. The question is, if a person is a sole practitioner, what is the requirement of ACCA law? I think we've already discussed this.
Yep.
The next question is from Murtaza. Is asking, if someone does part-time tax consultancy, whether is he required to get onto the register or earn a practicing certificate? It's a part-time practitioner.
Yes,
Part-time tax practitioner.
yes, they would. Yeah, it's the type of work that's undertaken, not whether it's full-time or spare time. So taxation work generally does fall within the meaning of public practice. So, helping someone with their tax returns or giving tax advice, signing a tax return, any kind of communication with tax authorities, that is classed as public practice. So a member would either need to go on to the Register of Practitioners or apply for a practicing certificate, even if it's just done on a spare time or a part-time basis.
Okay. All right. The next question is from Mohammed Talha Afzal asking, are you allowed to use the tagline Chartered Certified Accountants on your stationery if you provide services that do not constitute public practice? So, for example, bookkeeping. Or he's saying, would you need to be on the register to use that tagline?
Yes, you would need to hold a practicing certificate or be on the register to use that. If the type of work that you're doing is say bookkeeping, then that's not classed as public practice. So you don't need a practicing certificate. You don't need to go onto the register, but that means you cannot use Chartered Certified Accountants on your headed paper. So even if you do not wish to obtain a practicing certificate or to go onto the register because you're only doing bookkeeping work, if you do decide to obtain a practicing certificate or go onto the register, it would allow you to use those terms to promote your practice. Yeah.
So if I can reiterate, number one, you have to see if the work you're doing falls under the definition of practice. If it does, only then, depending upon the local statutory requirements, you can either choose between the Register of Practitioners or the practicing certificate.
That's right. That's right.
Based on you've received, once you're listed on the Register of Practitioner or you received your PC, only then you can use the tagline charts.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next question is from Khalid Mahmood asking, I have completed my 4 years of articleship from a chartered accountancy firm, which is, a firm, regulated by ICAP in Pakistan, prior to my ACCA qualification. So I'll just repeat the question. It says, I've completed my 4 year of articleship from a CA firm prior to my ACCA qualification. Do I need further 2 years supervised experience for the practicing certificate?
Yes. The practicing certificate requires 3 years of experience in total, 2 of which must be post-membership. So we can count 1 year of the pre-membership experience, but 2 years of experience must be achieved after admission to membership, and it must be achieved in a supervised capacity as an employee or a subcontractor of an accountancy firm.
Okay. All right. The next question is from Baba Khattar asking, if I obtain a tax practitioner license from FPR based on being an MBA, do I still need to be registered on the ROP?
So that body, Haroon, is that the tax body in Pakistan?
Yes.
Yeah, is that?
Yes. The Board of
So
Revenue.
okay, so I think if the member is doing taxation work, if the member is offering taxation services, if he's registered with that body, then I assume he's doing tax work for clients, in which case that's public practice, and in which case he needs to either go on to the register or obtain a practicing certificate.
That's right. That's right. So
Yep.
whether the tax practitioner certificate has been achieved on the basis of another qualification, if you are an ACCA member offering practice, doing public practice, you must be on the ROP or you must have the PC as the law requires.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters to us how the member obtained his tax certificate, you know, as long as he's got it, as long as he's been authorised by that body. Because one thing, Haroon, that I maybe forgot to mention was that for members who go on to the register, they may be selected to provide evidence that they are authorised to practice in the relevant country, like a copy of a licence from another body, like that tax body. So we might contact a random sample of members to say, thank you for your application. You know, please send us a copy of your license from this body or that body. You've indicated that you hold a license from that body. Please send us a copy. So that's not something that we've done yet, but that's something that we will be doing in the future, just to give us added comfort that the member is being regulated by somebody in the country.
Yes. And I think if I can once again give you another example of that, Martin, there is an individual in Pakistan who is an ACCA member as well as a member of the local accounting body, and he's the partner in a firm of accountants. Yeah, and he has a practicing certificate from the National Accountancy Body. So based on that practicing certificate, he just presents a copy of that to ACCA. ACCA will be able to issue its own practicing certificate to the member.
Yeah,
right?
that's absolutely correct. So on the online registration form for the Register of Practitioners, he would just tick the box to say, I hold a practicing certificate from XYZ. And if we ever asked him to forward a copy, he would just send that to us as his evidence. So that's absolutely right. Yep.
That's right. Okay, and one more example, ACCA is getting so particular about practicing certificate and registered practitioners now because there was an individual who contacted me who was a partner in a firm once again, and he wanted to get reinstated, and ACCA would not reinstate him as a member unless and until he filled up this application for ROP, and only then he was reinstated, as an ACCA member. So that's how stringent the requirement is at the moment.
Yes.
Just to mention that this is essential and non-compliance is not an option.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not an option. It's compulsory. It's a condition. It's a condition of being a member that you comply with the rules and regulations. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The last two questions. So the next question is from Muhammad Talha Afzal. He's asking, if you're providing audit service to a company that is not required under company law to be audited, for example, a partnership, do you still need to get on the register? So it's not a listed company; it's a partnership, and let's say this individual who's a member is doing an audit of that organization?
Yeah, I don't think it matters whether it's audit exempt or not. If the nature of the work is public practice, which audit is, then the member needs to hold a practicing certificate or go on to the ROP. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether the client requires an audit by law or is audit exempt or volunteers for an audit. It doesn't matter. It's the nature of the work that's the important thing.
Okay, perfect. Next one is Mohammed Amir and saying, sir, 2 years experience after admission of membership should be from a chartered accounting firm or should it be from any organization or company, etc.? We're talking about the PCTR.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So in our regulations, it says that the experience should be obtained in an ACCA approved employer, but we appreciate, that there isn't a lot of ACCA approved employers outside of the UK and Ireland, so we do still accept experience from members who have achieved experience in other types of accountancy practices, as long as the person who has signed off the experience is a member of, say, an IFAC body, because we would carry out a status check on that member to make sure that they themselves were a member and they themselves were authorised to practice by their own body. So if a member has obtained 2 years of post-membership training in a chartered accountancy practice in Pakistan, then that experience should be fine. But we would carry out a status check on the principal who signs off the experience just to make sure that he is a chartered accountant and that he is licensed by that body. And then that would be fine. Yeah.
Right, Martin. But if let's suppose is not a public practice where an ACCA member is working for the 2 years. I mean, if it is a corporate sector organization, but there is a supervisor available. So what is the condition in that case?
Yeah, again, experience achieved in the corporate sector can count towards a practicing certificate. In that case, the principal who signs off the PCTR has to be a member of like an IFAC body. So they wouldn't have to hold a practicing certificate from their own body. They just have to be a member, because obviously they wouldn't hold a practicing certificate because they're not in public practice, they're in the corporate sector. So again, we would still carry out a status check on that person, but it would just be to confirm that that person is a member of whatever body it is they're a member of. So in the corporate sector, in the public sector, experience can still count, and the supervisor just has to be a member of a recognised accountancy body to sign off the experience for the member.
Okay, all right. And I think we should move on to the last question now. It's an interesting one. This question is about outsourcing. And Jawad Chuktai is asking that if someone is working offshore, say from Pakistan, for a UK auditing company and auditing the accounts of an organization in the UK, but the work is being outsourced to Pakistan, what is the requirement of practicing certificate of ROP in that case? Now, I'll rephrase the question. Let's suppose the member is based in Pakistan and he is getting work outsourced by another firm in the UK, right? Not his own firm, but another firm in the UK. He's just getting work outsourced. What is the requirement for PC or ROP?
So if the member in Pakistan is doing this work as a subcontractor, basically, for another firm,
yes,
if that's the case, then there is no requirement around practicing certificate or the ROP. If that is the case, if the member has his own private clients that he's doing public practice work for, then a practicing certificate or the ROP would be required for that. But if he's acting as a subcontractor to another accountancy practice, which is in the UK, then I don't think there's any requirement around practicing certificates or the ROP. Again, Haroon, it's maybe one of those ones that I would maybe have to look into a bit closer. That's just it's a bit more complicated, that one. So it's maybe one of these ones I would have to maybe ask the member to write in or write to yourself, and you could maybe forward the query on. I'll just need to maybe spend a bit of time checking it over. Yeah.
Okay, so Jawad, if you can, you put your question in an email, I can forward it to Martin, and he can get us a closer view on that. I think the last question we want, I mean, there's so many last questions, there are more questions coming in. Let's take this one. It says, if an ACCA member is not practicing in an accountancy firm but in a corporate sector, is it possible to register for ACCA practitioner? And we've said yes, but I'll ask Martin to once again give an answer.
Yep. So if a member's working in the corporate sector and then decides they wish to obtain a practicing certificate, their experience in the corporate sector would count, as long as their principal, who signs off their training, is themselves a member of a recognised accountancy body.
Great. All right. Thank you so very much, Martin, for your time. I think this was a fantastic session. I mean, a lot of my concepts have also been cleared up.
Good.
I think the important messages here are, number one, ACCA in Pakistan is offering practicing certificates for non-audit practice, particularly because of the statutory requirements, because of statutory needs. ACCA in Pakistan is not allowed to do audit, and that's why ACCA is not issuing the audit qualification or practicing certificate for audit in Pakistan. We are talking mainly about non-audit practice and register of practitioners. We very quickly talked about the requirements for being on the register of practitioner or being, or earning a practicing certificate. I think those were very clear. Very importantly about the use of logo. Very importantly about the process. How long does this process take? How thorough this process is. So I think there was a lot of information shared with all of you today. I will very quickly tell you, what you're going to get next after this webinar. Number one, this webinar was recorded. So a recording of this webinar will be made available to all of you, and those who were unable to attend it live today and would want to view it afterwards, it will be available. Number two, and we have a permission from Martin on this, that we are going to convert this presentation into a PDF and share it with all of you. So you will have access to the important links that were mentioned in Martin's presentation. So you'll have access to that. Number three, since this discussion was about business, about work, it was professional development. So yes, we will be issuing certificates for you to claim this as verifiable CPD. So that's going to happen. Any further questions, you can always send your emails, and Martin has indicated that there were a few questions which were more specific. So for those members, you have to send an email at members.pk@accglobal.com, and we'll try to get you an answer as soon as possible. Martin, thank you very much for your time. We know you are very, very busy, and you have loads of applications sitting on your desk, and you have
yes.
people like anything. So thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I'm sure the feeling will be mutual from all our members also. Just one final comment from a member who was attending it live. He said, thanks to ACCA team for organizing this webinar. It was really informative. And the last expression is hats off. And Martin, hats off to you. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you very much, all of you. That's all for this webinar. If you have any further questions regarding the practicing certificate, we will be more than keen, more than eager to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Take care and have a nice weekend.
Bye, Harun. Bye-bye.
Bye.